Ladies and gentlemen, it's time for...
It's the Real Jonathan Smith Show on Indy's Sports Ticket, 1430 AM and 99.5 HD2.
What's going on? It's the Real Jonathan Smith Show here on Indy's Sports Ticket. Man, I've got a great show today. Brent Dougherty of 104.5 The Zone in Nashville. He's set to join me at 11 o'clock. We're going to talk Will Levis. For those of you concerned about Anthony Richardson, for those of you who didn't like what you saw from Anthony Richardson, just be thankful that Will Levis isn't our starting quarterback here based off of what he did on Sunday in Chicago. If you didn't hear, they lost 24-17, and the Bears scored 0 offensive touchdowns. So very excited to talk to Brent about that at 11 o'clock. But I have to open with Chris Ballard. JuJu Brents, we find out yesterday, is potentially out for the year. He has been placed on IR with a knee injury. And this is where Chris Ballard is the worst. I think being an NFL general manager, really a general manager of any sport, is difficult. There are a lot of things that happen outside of a general manager's control. A lot of your success is directly tied to your quarterback. The only way to get a good quarterback is to be terrible and then draft them high. And here's the thing, if you're terrible, everyone's going to be mad at you. Hiring a coach isn't easy to do. Drafting players is hard. A third of the NFL is undrafted. It is hard to be a general manager in the NFL. There are just a lot of things that happen outside of your control. But there are specific things that happen every single year in the NFL. Okay, depth is incredibly important for roster building in the NFL because injuries happen to every team every single year in the NFL. It's part of why we've never seen an NFL team three-peat as a Super Bowl champion, because usually someone important gets hurt over the course of that 3-year span. Part of why half of the NFL playoff field changes every year is because injuries happen. Over 60 different players started a game at quarterback last year. That's insane. Injuries happen, and you have to be ready for them. Part of roster building is creating depth. And Chris Ballard has completely ignored the idea of building depth in the secondary for years. He hasn't used premium draft picks to take players in the secondary. I went back through his drafts. Okay, in 2017, he drafted a safety and a corner in the first 2 rounds. For context, I would define premium draft picks as picks in the first and second round. One of the first 64 players off the board. When you look at the success rate of players drafted, most of the players that get drafted that stay in the league for a long time are drafted in either the first or the second round. Now that you have that context. In 2017, Chris Ballard took a safety and a corner in the first 2 rounds. 2018, he didn't take a single defensive back. 2019, he took a corner in the second round, 2 safeties in the 4th and 5th round. 2020, he took a safety in the 3rd round and a corner in the 6th. 2021, he took a defensive back in the 5th round. 2022, he took a defensive back in the 3rd round. 2023, he took a defensive back in the 2nd, 5th, and 7th rounds. Then this year, he took a defensive back in the 5th and 6th round. It's a lot of 5th rounders and 4th rounders and 6th rounders and 7th rounders. He rarely uses premium draft picks on secondary players. Meanwhile, this year, he had the 15th overall pick in the draft. And if you don't remember, the first 14 selections of this year's NFL draft were all on the offensive side of the football. That means that with the 15th pick, Chris Ballard could have taken whoever he wanted on the defensive side of the ball. And instead of addressing the secondary, instead of addressing the positional group that the Colts needed the most help at, both talent-wise and depth-wise. Instead of drafting Quinion Mitchell, the best corner in the draft, who I'm on record saying Chris Ballard should take, instead of taking that guy who's now starting for the Philadelphia Eagles and played pretty well on Friday night, instead he decided to take Leatu Latu, another defensive lineman. Why take another defensive lineman? The Colts have plenty of them. You know what they didn't have at the time, don't have right now? A good secondary. They didn't have very much talent in the secondary. Quinion Mitchell is starting for the Eagles right now. And he's a good player. Played really well week 1 against a good Packers receiving core. In 8 drafts during Chris Ballard's tenure here in Indianapolis, he has used only 4 premium picks. Once again, that is a first or second round draft pick on defensive backs. No wonder the Colts secondary lacks both depth and talent. 2 of those premium picks were all the way back in 2017. Neither one of those guys are even on the roster anymore. No wonder this Colts secondary lacks depth. And look, I don't mind that he doesn't want to draft defensive backs. The issue is he doesn't use free agency. Like, you have to do one or the other. You can't ignore free agency and then not prioritize the position in the draft. If he doesn't want to prioritize drafting cornerbacks and safeties in the draft, that's fine. That's totally okay with me. Okay? And look, like, I feel like when you're drafting players, because, there's 22 starters on every team, and you're going to have, probably somewhere around 7 picks a year, it's hard to address every single position group with these premium picks because you're usually only going to have 1, 2, maybe 3 a year. So that means that the positions that you don't prioritize during the draft, you have to go to free agency to bolster the depth. And Chris Ballard has completely ignored the entire secondary portion of the Colts roster. It is malpractice to do that. Okay? It is simply malpractice. I really can't believe it. Okay, anytime you're the manager of anything, if you ignore an entire portion of whatever your job is to manage, then usually you wind up getting fired. Okay, and it's total malpractice from Chris Ballard to have ignored that secondary room for the past 8 years. In addition to that, the Colts have been 28th in defense the last 2 years. And a large part of that has been because the secondary hasn't been very good. And he still just continues to ignore it. Why in the world would Chris Ballard want to sign, or draft secondary guys? Yeah, like it doesn't make sense. He should just go out, sign some more horseshoe guys, go 9-8, and then re-sign the players that went 9-8. Because that has been the story for the most part under Chris Ballard. The Colts being a 9-8 football team. Okay, and that's probably where they're headed towards now, because this defense isn't going to stop anybody. The front 7 got ran over against the Texans, and now the best corner in this very thin Colts cornerback room is going to be out for a while. But here's the thing. Chris Ballard can still fix this. Chris Ballard can still fix this debacle with JuJu Brents getting hurt. He can do more than just sign Chris Lamons, an NFL journeyman who started his career in Miami and then ended up in Kansas City. He was in Indy last year, barely played, and now he just got pulled up from the practice squad. He can do more than just call up Chris Lamons. Okay, there are still good veteran cornerbacks on the market that are available to come in and play for the Colts. Players that would walk in to the Colts cornerback room and immediately be the best player in the room. Xavier Howard, still on the market. Patrick Peterson, a little older, played pretty well in Minnesota last year, still on the market. Marcus Peters, a guy that had quite the career playing for the Baltimore Ravens, a dude who's physical. He is the best corner, definitely, best, defensive back, definitely, that I've ever seen at stripping guys. Like, that guy is just a turnover machine. Marcus Peters would be awesome on this Indianapolis Colts defense. Jerry Jacobs, the guy who started for the Detroit Lions last year, he's still on the market. There are older, proven veteran cornerbacks available for the Colts to go get. Okay, there is absolutely no excuse for Chris Ballard to not go out and sign one of these guys. They would, any one of them, any one of the four guys that I just mentioned would step onto the Colts, facilities, practice field, whatever, real field, and they would immediately be the best cornerback on this Colts roster. And this is the issue with Chris Ballard. He's not going to go out into free agency and sign any of these guys because he is simply too stubborn. He is too stuck in his ways. And look, we already knew this. We already knew that he was too stuck in his ways to go out and do anything about it. Chris Ballard told us not that long ago.
I've never I guess maybe because my DNA is not, I've always had a strong belief in myself and those around me, strong belief in what we do. And if you just kind of look through the first few years and, we made the playoffs 2 of the first 4, had to overcome a, quarterback retiring on us, still found a way. I thought our 20 team was excellent. We just lost a tough game to Buffalo. That ended up being a really good team. And I thought in 21 was another really good football team. And it all kind of fell apart. The last 3 years not making the playoffs, it's a disappointment. I'm not going to sit here and say it wasn't. But I still have a very strong belief in what we're doing, how we're doing it, and how we're going to get there. And that will not – either you believe for something or you believe nothing. Like, it's easy to vacillate and go with what the world wants you to do. You either believe in something or you don't. This is what we believe. If it gets me fired, so be it.
It's going to get you fired, Chris. That was Chris Ballard waxing poetic about something. I don't even know about his philosophy and his DNA and how he's a real believer in what they do there. And what they do in that Indianapolis Colts building is go 9-8 every year. Look, I understand wanting to believe in something. Every general manager in every sport has a different philosophy on how teams should be built. Here's the thing, though. If everyone is telling you to do something and you don't listen, at some point, you're just obstinate. Obstinate people cannot lead. The best leaders listen to the people around them. And the best leaders have people in their ear, in their inner circle, that don't agree and pander to everything that they say. It's why Michael Jordan was a terrible owner. No one ever told Michael Jordan no. No one ever told him that he was wrong. And that's why the Hornets sucked the entire time that Michael Jordan owned them. There's one of two issues going on in the Indianapolis Colts building. One of two issues going on with Chris Ballard. One, Chris Ballard doesn't have anyone in that building, none of his scouts, nobody in that building disagreeing with him. That is an issue. Or he has people pushing back against how he's building the team. He has people pushing back on the lack of depth in the secondary, and he's simply not listening. Either way, whether it's him refusing to surround himself with people that challenge his opinions, or it's him just being obstinate. Once again, obstinate people are terrible leaders because you have to be able to pivot in the correct direction if you're going in the wrong direction. Okay, the Colts have been going the wrong way for, 5 years now? They haven't made the playoffs in 5 years. And Chris Ballard will not pivot. He will not change his ways. And that's the issue with Chris Ballard. He refuses to change. And look, change sucks. Change isn't fun for anybody, especially when you've been doing something one way for 8 years. Change is not fun, but it is necessary. Having people challenge you and your opinions is necessary. Okay, look, I've been hosting this radio show for like 8 months. First radio show I've gotten to host. I'm having a blast. I hope you're having a blast tuning in. If you're new, every day from 10 to noon right here on 1430. And so because I'm new at this, I meet with my boss often, very often. Wednesdays, I go in, we're pulling audio, we're listening to clips, we're running stuff back. We're trying to figure out changes that I need to make to get better. And I run ideas by him. And if I have an idea that sucks, he tells me. And it's a blessing. It really is. I hate hearing it. I hate being excited about an idea that I have and him being like, yeah, you can't do that because this, and this. Right? It stinks. It's terrible when people tell you that you're wrong. But you have to understand that they're telling you that in your best interest. The only other way to find out if an idea is bad is to try it and see the result. And when I look at Chris Ballard, it's what he's been doing for the last 8 years. He's like, I have this idea. Let's completely neglect the secondary for 8 years, only focus on the defensive line, and that's all that he's focused on. Remember, the Colts starting linebackers are a 6th-round pick in E.J. Speed and a 7th-round pick in Zaire Franklin. Translation, Chris Ballard got lucky because usually 6th and 7th-round picks are not starting caliber players. The only thing that Chris Ballard has prioritized in the draft is offensive and defensive linemen. That is it. And that is a terrible way to run a football team. If you don't believe me, just look at the 8 years under Chris Ballard. The Colts secondary is going to be horrendously bad this year. And if the Colts give up 1 million passing yards a game, which that kind of feels like where we're headed, Gus Bradley is not at fault. Okay, we can talk about coaching and how, coaching can make players better and all those things. But ultimately, when you're playing a professional sport, it's incredibly helpful when you have, the better players. And the Colts are going to walk into every single game that they play this year. And their secondary, talent-wise, is going to be worse than whoever the receivers are on the opposing team. Okay, so I'm going to have a really hard time holding Gus Bradley at fault for anything this year. This is all squarely on Chris Ballard's shoulders. It's tough to have a good defense. It's tough to not be 28th in the NFL in defense when your general manager doesn't prioritize it. It's a major, major issue. If you've been listening to my show, The Real Jonathan Smith Show, every day from 10 to noon, you can watch on YouTube. Head over there, search for Indies Sports Ticket, subscribe, watch the live stream. We are 5 subscribers away from 100, which would be pretty sick. You know that I like to be positive. I like to try to find the positive light in these things. And Colts fans, I have found the glass half full approach to this JuJu Brents issue, and I'm going to give it to you when we come back here in about 4 minutes.
Welcome back to the Real Jonathan Smith Show on Indy's Sports Ticket, 1430 AM and 99.5 HD2.
The Real Jonathan Smith Show here on Indy's Sports Ticket. Hope you're having a nice day. 11 o'clock. Brent Dougherty of 104.5 The Zone in Nashville is set to join me. Look, things don't look great for the Colts right now. They look a little dire after the JuJu Brents news came out yesterday. But hey, at least Will Levis isn't our quarterback. Go back and watch that game. He's bad. He's not very good. So there's some good news there. But in terms of the JuJu Brents news, I do think that I'm not going to say that the Colts have caught a break. That's not really the right way to phrase it. But this is the best time for this to happen. Because the Colts don't play a good quarterback for 3 straight weeks. Okay, that gives them 3 games worth to kind of figure out what they're going to do. Like this week, I'm about to talk about this here in a second. It's likely going to be Malik Willis. Apparently Jordan Love could still play on Sunday. I doubt it. Everything I've read says that he has a sprained MCL. They just paid him a boatload of money. I don't think that they want to jeopardize his future. So probably going to see Malik Willis on Sunday. Then the following week, the Colts play the Bears and Caleb Williams, who wasn't very good in week 1, only threw for 93 yards against the Titans. And then 3 weeks from now, they'll play against the Steelers with Russell Wilson or Justin Fields playing quarterback. So the Colts this is a good time for this injury thing to happen. Okay, they've got a few weeks to kind of figure out who they're going to use to replace JuJu Brents. I'm assuming it's going to be Dallas Flowers because he and Jalen Jones were the guys fighting it out to see who would be the starting corner opposite JuJu Brents. So we'll see what winds up happening there. But we got to get through this Sunday first. We're 4 days away from week 2 of the NFL season. And apparently Jordan Love could still play. I have to be honest, I would be shocked if Jordan Love played on Sunday. I would be, but apparently it's still an option. Just listen to what Green Bay Packers head coach Matt LaFleur had to say about this situation.
And is Malik going to be the guy as you go forward here, and are you preparing him to be the starter?
Yeah, if Jordan's not cleared, then we'll start Malik, and Sean will be the backup.
What's the possibility of, say, if Jordan is clear, what's the possibility of Jordan actually being ready for?
I couldn't give you a percentage, but if he gets cleared, we'll give him every opportunity like we always will. And, I know he's doing everything in his power. I know he's spending a lot of time trying to get back as soon as possible, but certainly we're not going to put him in a position where if he can't protect himself that he'd go out there.
That was Green Bay Packers head coach addressing the media yesterday about Jordan Love, saying he hasn't really been ruled out yet. This is what every team does. Okay. Look, I know that Dan has talked about how the Colts lie about how long guys are going to be out for. Every team does. Okay. Because they want their opposition, especially if it's the quarterback position. Like the Packers want for the Colts to take time out of their week this week to prepare for Jordan Love instead of Malik Willis. It's normal. Okay. Because let's be honest here. Jordan Love, I'd be shocked if he played. He sprained his MCL. That's a knee injury. It's not an easy thing to deal with. And it's one that could definitely get worse. Okay, especially against this Colts defensive line. Here's what I think is going to happen. Packers are going to sit down. They're going to watch the Colts week 1 game tape. They're going to be like, geez, man, CJ Stroud got sacked 4 times and he got hit 10 times total. Like that's kind of nuts. That's a lot. Do we really want to put Jordan Love out there playing against this defensive line? So I would be surprised if Jordan Love played. Okay. I don't think that the Packers want to risk Jordan Love's long-term health this early in the year. And that's what you're doing if you roll him out there and you ask him to play quarterback for you. Okay. So that means that the Indianapolis Colts are going to receive a gift. They get to play Malik Willis. Cannot wait for Brent Dougherty of 104.5 The Zone in Nashville to come on. He's joining me at 11 o'clock. So here in about 30 minutes or so, he's going to join me. And Malik Willis, played for the Titans most recently. He was traded right before cut day for a 7th round pick. So, Brent, he's been in Nashville. He knows what Malik Willis is like. I can tell you right now, Malik Willis isn't very good. He got traded for a 7th round pick. I think that tells us everything that we need to know about Malik Willis. And, Brent is going to kind of fill in some of the gray area on that and tell us everything we need to know about Malik. Once again, it's coming up at 11 o'clock. But, spent some time on Pro Football Reference last night, as I do, And Malik Willis has played in 12 games during his career. He started 3 of them. He's 1-2 in those 3 starts. It's not very good. And then, I sit down and I started looking at his numbers. Didn't throw a single touchdown pass in those 3 starts. He threw 3 interceptions, and he only completed 51% of his passes in those 3 starts. I'm going to go out on a limb and say Malik Willis isn't very good at football. The dude can't throw. I know that we watch Anthony Richardson and we're like, oh, this guy can't throw either. No, he can, Anthony Richardson can at least push the ball down the field accurately. Okay, like he's capable of making throws. Malik Willis, not even capable of making the throws. 0 touchdown passes, 3 interceptions, only completed 51% of his passes in those 3 starts. He can't throw. But he is athletic and he can run. He ran for over 40 yards in 2 of his 3 starts, averaging just under 5 yards a carry, right? So that is the wrinkle of this. Malik Willis is a guy who, if he gets outside the pocket, he can wreak some havoc with his legs. It's something that you have to be conscious of as the defense. But you would think that it wouldn't really matter that much because the dude just can't throw. So a couple things that I'm going to be really watching for as the Colts take on Willis and this Packers offense, because, like I said, I'd be really surprised if Jordan Love played. I think that what Matt LaFleur is saying is just a bunch of smoke. But look, the Packers aren't going to trust Malik Willis to throw the ball. Because of that, we're going to see a ton of Josh Jacobs. We're going to see a lot of running of the football from the Green Bay Packers. And that is concerning because of what we saw in week 1 from the Indianapolis Colts. Gus Bradley spoke yesterday and mentioned that, part of why they struggled to stop the run is because they were so concerned with Nico Collins, Stephon Diggs, and Tank Dell. They had 3 receivers that they really had to account for. And obviously, if CJ Stroud's the quarterback, that he can deliver the ball on time and on target. Okay, so the Colts were just a little bit more concerned with that versus the run game. And that's part of why they gave up so many rushing yards. They shouldn't have to worry about that this week. Yes, the Green Bay Packers have a deep wide receiver room. They've got 3 dudes that can all really play. But they don't have a quarterback who can throw the ball. So I would expect what we're going to see from the Colts defense this week is they're going to load the box on 1st and 2nd downs and dare Malik Willis to throw to beat them, which before the JuJu Brents injury, I'd have been like, okay, Colts should be fine doing that. But now that it's probably going to be Dallas Flowers and Jalen Jones playing corner, I now no longer feel good about that at all. So hopefully the Colts run defense is fixed because Josh Jacobs is going to get a ton of carries, and these Packer and Malik Willis is undoubtedly going to run the football as well. So that this Colts front 7 is going to be tested once again. Hopefully they can hold up well enough on the back end to just kind of keep the Packers pass game in check. But you would think that Malik Willis would be capable of doing that all on his own. Offensively, I just want to see the Colts run the football. That's what I want to see. They're going to be fine throwing the ball as long as Anthony Richardson doesn't have, a game where he throws 3 picks, because we're definitely going to see some games like that this year. Hopefully that's not this week. But I want to see them run the ball. I thought that the pass protection last week from the Colts was good. Okay, on average, they gave Anthony Richardson just under 3 seconds to throw the football on average. That's good. Like, that's good, solid pass protection in the NFL. But they didn't run the ball. And that is the alarming thing. Okay? Because this Colts offense has to find something that is reliable. Okay, there has to be something that they know that they can go to when they need to pick up 4 or 5 yards. And I like Anthony Richardson. He's he's obviously super talented, but as we all know, the consistency not quite there yet in the pass game. And so the thing that the Colts need to be consistent is the run game. They need Jonathan Taylor around 4 or 5 yards a carry. Or not even just Jonathan Taylor. Like, if they can just average 4 or 5 yards a carry in general on designed runs, whether it's Jonathan Taylor carrying the football or it's Anthony Richardson. Either way, I just want to see them find a consistent ground game this week. I think we're going to see a little bit more involvement in the run game from Anthony Richardson. Okay, because that's just an extra element. When he ran the ball last week, he ran it pretty well. He had like 9 carries for 56 yards, if I remember correctly. That's over 5 yards a carry, whereas Jonathan Taylor struggled, only 3 yards a carry, on 16 carries for 48 yards. So going to be interesting. I'm very excited to see what they look like. This is a game that the Colts should win. If they don't win, I think we'll all be incredibly surprised, especially if Malik Willis is the starting quarterback and not Jordan Love. If Jordan Love plays, obviously everything else changes with that. It becomes a much tougher game for the Colts to go up there and win. Once again, this game is on the road taking on the Green Bay Packers. So they're going to Lambeau. Should be interesting. I am excited to watch this game. I want to see if they updated the line. They have not. So even though Matt LaFleur came out and said that there was a chance that Jordan Love might play, the Colts are still favored by 3.5, which tells me Jordan Love is not going to suit up on Sunday. 11 o'clock, Brent Dougherty of 104.5 The Zone is set to join me. We're going to talk a little Will Levis. Malik Willis recently played for the Titans. So Brent hopefully going to be able to give us a good idea of what to expect with him. The Indiana Fever play tonight. The Caitlin Clark effect is still alive and well. Learned that last night when I was out to dinner. I've got that story for you when we come back here in 4 minutes.
The best takes, stories, and entertainment. It's The Real Jonathan Smith Show on Indy Sports Ticket, 1430 AM and 99.5 HD2.
We have the best guests here on The Real Jonathan Smith Show as well. Brent Dougherty of 104.5 The Zone in Nashville, set to join me here in about 20 minutes at 11 o'clock. He's going to give me his thoughts on the Titans. Will Levis didn't have a great day. It's the nicest way that I can put it. He's going to give me his thoughts on him. But before we get to that, once again, that comes up here in about 20 minutes. The Indiana Fever play tonight against the Las Vegas Aces at home, Gamebridge Fieldhouse. And Dan and I have discussed this on his show. I've talked about it a little bit on my show as well, of what is going to happen when the football season begins. Are people still going to be as obsessed with Caitlin Clark as they once were? Okay, that is the question. And as far as I was concerned, I thought that as soon as the football season started, people would cease to care about Caitlin Clark and the Indiana Fever. But I was at dinner last night with my beautiful wife. We're out, dressed up all nice, beautiful restaurant. You know, we're eating just really good food, and we're talking and we're laughing, just a great time. You know, fall's pretty busy for me, so I like it when my wife and I can go out and eat dinner together and just turn off our phones and hang out. And so we're, talking, laughing, having a good time. She looks at me and she goes, "Hey, I need to go use the restroom." I'm like, "Okay, that's fine. Go ahead." So she stands up, she leaves the table. And so I'm sitting there, I'm by myself there for a bit. I'm eating my food and just kind of listening to the conversations happening around me, because I don't know what happens, but when people go into restaurants, it's like they think that their booth is like soundproof and that no one can hear what they're saying. Heard some interesting conversations happening around me, but one of them was this group of ladies who walked in. They sit down at their table, they start talking. They have some southern drawl whenever they're speaking to their waitress, and their waitress asks them very, very simply, like "You guys don't sound like you're from around here. Where are you guys from?" And they all respond that they're from South Carolina. I'm like, "Oh, okay, that's cool." And the waitress asks, why are you in Indianapolis on a Tuesday night if you're from South Carolina?" And their response was that they traveled by car up here to watch Caitlin Clark play basketball. They drove all the way from South Carolina to watch the Indiana Fever, and Caitlin Clark more specifically, play basketball tonight. While they're here, I hope they have a great time. Okay, Indianapolis, great city. But the Caitlin Clark effect is still alive and well. Tonight's game will be sold out because every Indiana Fever game is sold out. Even if the people here in Indianapolis have a little Caitlin Clark fatigue or whatever you want to call it, people from outside of the state of Indiana, people outside of Indianapolis are still making the drive, making the flight, paying the money to come and watch Caitlin Clark play basketball. The Caitlin Clark effect is still alive and well, and it should be. I gave the WNBA a hard time to start the season because I thought that they didn't do Caitlin Clark any favors. Okay, like they had to play the Liberty and then the Sun, and then they were out west and they had to play the Aces, and and then they were up in the Northwest and they had to play Seattle, and then they're like, you can go play Minnesota now, and like they never played home games, and they were always on the road taking on some of the best teams in the WNBA. But the WNBA did something correct. Basketball and football are very different in this regard. When it comes to football, we are fans of teams. Okay, you are an Indianapolis Colts fan. I am a Miami Dolphins fan. Okay? Right? That's just kind of how it works. When it comes to the NFL, we are fans of teams. The NBA and the WNBA, however, it's not how we operate. Okay, there are LeBron James fans who were, who rooted for the Cleveland Cavaliers when LeBron was in Cleveland, and then they rooted for the Miami Heat when he was in Miami, and then they rooted for Cleveland again when he went to Cleveland, and now they're pulling for the Los Angeles Lakers because that's where LeBron is. They're Kevin Durant fans. They rooted for him when he was in Oklahoma City, and then when he went to Golden State, they pulled for Golden State, and then he went to Brooklyn, and then they were rooting for Brooklyn, and then now he's in Phoenix, and now they're pulling for Phoenix. In basketball, we root for players. It's the same thing with the WNBA. People don't root for the Chicago Sky. They root for Angel Reese. People don't root or cheer for the Indiana Fever. People cheer for and root for and show up to games for Caitlin Clark. Okay, the NBA, WNBA is very individualistic. That is what gets us to our TV screens, individual players. Whereas football, it's just really about the team in general. And tonight's game will be sold out because people want to see Caitlin Clark play basketball. And this is where I give the WNBA credit. A normal, everyday person could have assumed that Caitlin Clark was going to get better as the year progressed. And the WNBA probably knew that. And they're like, you know what? Late in the year, after football season starts, we need a marquee matchup between Caitlin Clark and someone else. And the answer was simple. Let's let her play against the best player in the WNBA. Let's have them play the Las Vegas Aces on a Wednesday night when there's no football going on. Genius, incredibly smart move by the WNBA and the people that made the schedule. Because when it comes to basketball, football as well, anytime the two best players in any league play against each other, people tune in. And that's what we have tonight. We have the best player in the WNBA, A'ja Wilson of the Las Vegas Aces, playing against the second best player in the WNBA, Caitlin Clark. And people are going to tune in to watch it because it's the two best players in the league playing against each other. Okay? And whenever this happens in basketball, football, baseball, whatever, people tune in for it. When the Bills play the Chiefs, I'm always going to tune in. And you're always going to tune in, even though you aren't a Bills or a Chiefs fan. You're going to tune in because it's the two best quarterbacks in the NFL playing against each other. And Josh Allen and Patrick Mahomes. Growing up for me, I wasn't a Patriots fan, couldn't stand them, wasn't a Colts fan. But when Tom Brady and Peyton Manning were on the field together, you better believe that was appointment television. Even though I wasn't a Colts or a Patriots fan, I was sitting down and I was going to watch that game because it was the two best quarterbacks in the NFL going at it. Way back in the day when Larry Bird and Magic Johnson played against each other, whether it was in college at Michigan State and Indiana State, or whether it was in the NBA, Celtics, Lakers. When those guys played against each other, everyone tuned in because they were the two best players in the NBA. We see the exact same thing now. When LeBron James and Kevin Durant square off and they play against each other, everyone tunes in. When Steph Curry and Kevin Durant or Steph Curry and LeBron James play against each other, everyone tunes in. Everyone loves a marquee matchup between stars, no matter what the sport is. I remember, I believe it was 3 years ago, the World Baseball Classic happens. I'm sitting down, I'm watching Team USA, and I'm looking at the bracket, and I'm looking at the trajectory of who's going to play against who and all these things. And I'm like, oh, Team USA is going to play against Japan, which means we're going to get Shohei Ohtani and Mike Trout. You better believe I was tuned in to every Mike Trout at bat because I wanted to see him face Shohei Ohtani. When big stars play against each other, we tune in, and that is what we are getting tonight. We're getting the best player in the WNBA, A'ja Wilson. The woman should be the unanimous MVP this year. We've got her taking on Caitlin Clark, who will one day be the best player in the WNBA, and who is and should be the unanimous Rookie of the Year. These are the matchups that people want to see in every sport. And good job by the WNBA for giving this to us on a Wednesday night. I will be tuned in, and you should be tuned in as well. Okay, I mean it's going to be fun to watch. And plus, once again, there is no football on tonight, which means what else are you going to do? You know? Like seriously, like what else are you going to do? What else are you going to watch? Okay, you don't want to watch a TV show. You want to watch Caitlin Clark play against Asia Wilson. Okay, last night, I don't know what you did. I was out to dinner, hanging out with my wife, having a blast. But if I hadn't been, I probably would have watched a little bit of baseball. I like watching the Phillies play. They're fun. There's a ton of talent on that team. I love Bryce Harper. I think he's great for the game of baseball. Okay. And there was a brawl last night between the Tampa Bay Rays and the Philadelphia Phillies. You know, Nick Castellanos gets hit like square on the hip, which people who don't know, if you get hit on the hip, it means that they were trying to hit you. Okay. Tough pitch to get out of the way of. So he gets hit. He doesn't like it. He charges the mound. And then from there, you know, everyone else comes out and they're pushing and shoving and all those things. And I was thinking about that this morning. I feel like the older I've gotten, the more and more Major League Baseball has turned into hockey. You don't hear much about the regular season. Okay, like when it comes to the hockey regular season, I never see anyone tweet about it. I don't see articles written about it. Never see it. Same thing with baseball now. Okay, when it comes to the regular season, I don't see people tweet about it very often. And I don't see articles written on it. But something I always see are the brawls. Anytime there's a fight in hockey, it is on my Twitter feed, and people are talking about it. And it's a big deal because let's be honest, we like it when guys fight. We just do. And it's the same thing with Major League Baseball. I go all year. I don't see anything about, you know, the Braves who are sticking it out despite not having their best pitcher and Ronald Acuna Jr. being out. They're still fighting for a wild card spot. Okay, Francisco Lindor's having an incredible year for the Mets. I love Francisco Lindor, one of my favorite players in baseball. Doesn't pop up on my feed. But as soon as Nick Castellanos takes a fastball off his left hip and decides to charge the mound and benches clear, it pops up on my feed. Like, baseball has reached this point where it's just like hockey. No one cares about the regular season unless there's a fight. And then when the playoffs start, everyone will start to tune in. But the issue for baseball that hockey doesn't have is that their playoffs take place during the NFL season. So baseball needs to make some changes. Yeah, I was thinking about that this morning. I was like, I haven't gotten a baseball thing on my Twitter feed in forever. And the first thing that I get when I do is this fight. And I just started thinking about it. I was like, that I get every baseball fight that pops up on my feed. I've been in one. They're fun. Playing summer ball. Teammate rounds first base. Teammate of mine rounds first base. This little short Puerto Rican kid. First baseman, like 6'4", 220. Sticks his butt out, knocks him down. Puerto Rican kid hops up, goes at him, benches clear, pushing, shoving, coaches grabbing guys, pushing them back, umpire staying out of the way. Yeah, not good. Really fun though. Great story that I have, you know, being able to say that I was in a bench clearing brawl. But yeah, just pretty incredible how much baseball has regressed over the years. Because I remember growing up, like seeing baseball on like baseball news, baseball topics on like ESPN and First Take and Sports Center. And now I turn on ESPN or Sports Center or Fox Sports or whatever, or I listen to local radio in other markets, whatever it is. Like I don't hear people discussing baseball unless there is some sort of physical altercation, a guy getting thrown at or some sort of fight. It's become just like hockey, and it sucks because baseball is an amazing sport that people should, I think people should enjoy more than what they do. But hey, What do I know? When we come back here in about 5 minutes, Brent Dougherty of 104.5 The Zone in Nashville, the Titans affiliate, he is set to join the show. Will Levis had a bad week against the Bears. Malik Willis, the likely starter for the Green Bay Packers, used to play for the Titans, played for him last year. So Brent Dougherty hopefully going to be able to give us a bit of a scouting report on what the Colts are up against on Sunday. That interview comes your way here in about 5 minutes.
Ladies and gentlemen, it's time for
It's the Real Jonathan Smith Show on Indy Sports Ticket, 1430 AM and 99.5 HD2.
What's going on? It's the Real Jonathan Smith Show. Hour number 2 is underway, joined by Brent Dougherty of 104.5 The Zone in Nashville. Brent, what's going on, man?
Yo, Jonathan, what's up, man? How are you?
I'm doing pretty well. I'm very curious to know, what was it like watching the game on Sunday with the absolute worst quarterback play of any game?
Yeah, that's a great point because when you combine the two, Caleb Williams, league low 93 yards, league low 48% passer, average pass per attempt, league low. And then Will Levis wanted to go out there and backward flip a ball in a 1-point game and just give the game away. So yeah, that was pretty brutal. And it's funny because like that game comes like at a bad time. Like if that game happens in week 6, we're like, okay, flush it, move on. But when you have a change in coaching staff and all of this hope and all these pieces added on the offense and defense and all these things, defense played really well, by the way. We'll get to that. But all of this hope going into the season opener, and you're up 17-0 on the road as a 4-point underdog, and then you give a 67-yard kickoff return for 3 points. You give a blocked punt away for a touchdown. You give a fumble away for 3 points. You give a pick 6 away. 21 of their 24 points came off of those 4 plays. It's mind-boggling to lose a game 24-17, and the defense gave up 3 legit points.
Yeah, I was going to say the defense, I watched the whole game. I thought the defense played really well. I was impressed. I was like, yeah, like all these offseason acquisitions that they made seem like they're paying off here in week 1. And then, like you said, Will Levis throws maybe the worst interception ever. What was, I'm assuming you guys took calls on Monday. What was the reaction to that? Because I'm assuming that's kind of the play that sticks out in everyone's mind there in Nashville.
Jonathan, I didn't have to wait till Monday, man. So we carry the Titans games on 104.5 The Zone in Nashville. I host the post-game show with Zach Lyons and with Kevin Dyson, who is the guy that returned the kickoff against Buffalo for the Music City Miracle. Right. And so we go in. The very first call we took, Jonathan, the guy said, trade Will Levis. I mean, very first call. And so I don't know. I'm trying to figure out what he is. You know what I mean? Because like, if you watch the game, the Titans led second most pressures allowed, 15. But if you go back and watch the game, I watched the game for a second time. God help me. And some of those pressures were because of offensive line play, but a lot of it had to do with Will Levis drifting in the pocket. And he had clear alleys to step up, climb the ladder, they like to say, and he just didn't do it. And it's funny because like I told you this the last time I was on with you, we had him on in studio for an hour. And one of the things that he said that he was working on this offseason was climbing the ladder in the pocket. He said it's difficult in practice, though, when they go good on good, because the Titans have T'Vondre Sweat and Big Jeffrey Simmons. And so it's hard to climb the pocket and kind of practice that because those guys are so good and you can't climb into them or you'll turn into a pretzel. But so the question is like, how much of this stuff is fixable and how much of this is Will Levis?
Yeah, that's a great question. Brent Dougherty of 104.5 The Zone in Nashville. So look, I think, obviously the play that sticks out in everyone's mind is the interception by Will Levis. But, the Titans ran probably somewhere around 60 plays on offense. Was there anything good that you took away from the game of like, Will Levis can potentially do this well all season or anything like that?
Number one, I think the Bears are very good up front.
Yeah.
And we knew that going in. We knew that was going to be a challenge for this offensive line. That's been NFL historically bad the last 2 seasons. They bring over Bill Callahan, who is the best offensive line coach in football, and I think that's without question. I just think with regard to the offensive line, it's going to take some time for those guys to gel. Saw some good stuff that they did, but again, Will Levis looked so uncomfortable in the pocket that it's really hard to kind of gauge those things, like how much of it is them, how much of it is him. Also, like, you know, when you're trying to evaluate a player, especially a quarterback. So I guess the hope is that this is the low data point for Will Levis, right? Like, so this is 10 games he has started. His first game, he threw 4 touchdown passes against the Atlanta Falcons and won. He had the historic comeback against Miami on Monday Night Football in Miami. So he's got positive data points too. It's just, you know, it's very difficult to like kind of figure out. Like I actually need more. I need to see him against the Jets. I need to see him against the Packers. And then the Titans have an early bye, so they have a bye week after the 4th week. So at that point, I think you'll have an indication as to maybe where he's trending. Not necessarily what he is, but I think they put together this roster to kind of move forward with him as the quarterback or without him as the quarterback. Because like if they end up with a high draft pick, this is a staff that did not draft him, right?
Yeah.
So if they have a high draft pick, you could definitely see them. Like if Will Levis, you know, doesn't work this year, they'll move on from him.
It's going to be interesting because he possesses a lot of good qualities. Like he's big, he's mobile, he's got a good arm, and I find him pretty fascinating. He reminds me a lot of the guy here in Indy, just big, athletic, big arm. And one of the things that we talked about here in Indianapolis about Richardson is just how young he is. Like he made his 5th start on Sunday.
Mm-hmm.
And I know that, you know, you're talking about different data points that you've kind of seen with Levis. Like, do you just like how long until you think they know what he is?
Man, that is a great question. I don't know. With regard to Anthony Richardson, I did want to make this point. Like we talked about this the last time I came on with you. The game against Houston exemplified exactly what we saw with him at Florida, right?
Yeah.
Like just unbelievable, spectacular highlight plays that just go around the league and everybody's like, nobody in the league can do this. Like to throw the ball 67 yards in the air or whatever it was on a dime, falling down on your back foot. Like how many guys could throw that just stepping into it in a clean pocket? Very few, right? So he'll throw that play on tape, but then, you know, he'll miss an 8-yard dig route, you know, and so I just, you know, 9 completions, but we see that touchdown and, you know, we see what he can be. But my only issue with Anthony Richardson, and I'm not saying he doesn't get there because he certainly could. He's got unbelievable skill set, right? But what I saw against the Texans was exactly what we saw with him at Florida.
I really like him. I like him more after watching the Texans game and just thinking about NFL offenses in general, joined by Brent Dougherty of 104.5 The Zone in Nashville. Like when I look at the Chiefs, you know, but then again, like they're the gold standard. And it's probably not fair to compare any offense to them, but they're at their best. And I think just the best offenses in the NFL have the ability to be highly explosive. Like, yes, the Colts offense wasn't super consistent on Sunday, but because of how explosive they were, they scored 27 points. That's usually enough to win. They just had to play Stroud. And so I like the explosiveness. I think it's easier to teach a guy how to throw the 8-yard dig than it is to, you know, throw a 67-yard dot while you're falling down. So I'm pretty optimistic about what he's going to be going forward. Like you said, like, you know, eventually you have to learn how to make the easy throws if you're going to last, but he's fun, which is not a bad thing.
Yeah. Indy's the kind, I don't know, like watching Jacksonville, they go up easily in Miami and then blow that lead. Indianapolis was right there, but CJ Stroud is so freaking good, dude. He's the kind of guy that just makes plays in a tight game to win, and it's hard to find that. You mentioned Mahomes. Like Kansas City was scary offensively in week 1 because last year they didn't have those playmakers at wide receiver at all. And so like Xavier Worthy running around his first touch, he ends up in the end zone, and you get Hollywood Brown back. Like that's a whole different animal because when you look at Kansas City's offense last year, like yards per pass attempt, way down. You know what I mean? Like they just figured out how to win a Super Bowl is what happened. And a lot of that, of course, the credit goes to Patrick Mahomes. He's just ridiculous. It's going to be a fun NFL season. I guess where I was going with that, I think we kind of know what Houston is. I think we're still wondering what Indy and Jacksonville are week to week consistently. We just don't know about Richardson yet.
Yeah.
And then Tennessee needs to beat the Jets this weekend. That's what needs to happen. And I think Tennessee defensively is good enough to get that done because now you've got a statue coming in that can't move. So you know where he is in the pocket. And Jeffrey Simmons and Harold Landry. Jeffrey Simmons got triple teamed on one play, and Harold Landry flew through and got a sack. T'Vondre Sweat, I know that like the numbers weren't there necessarily, like if you check box scores, but I was talking with Greg Cosell with NFL Films. He said he was absolutely dominant. They could not block him. And then I saw a highlight package that Brian Baldinger put out there where T. Sweat in his first game was, absolute animal. So, if I'm the Tennessee Titans, like if I'm Will Levis, I go into the defensive meeting room and apologize because that defense, number one in the NFL, played well enough to win that game. If they play a clean game, they win easily.
Oh, yeah, without a doubt. I mean, like you said, the defense was really good. Caleb Williams was flustered the entire time. Chicago couldn't run the ball. Like the defense for Tennessee was awesome. But like you said, 21 points off of 4 plays basically. And yeah, the whole game is it was just weird. It was crazy. One thing that I noticed watching that game, it really felt Tony Pollard dependence. Like they ran the ball a lot on first down. There were some checkdowns there to Tony Pollard. Do you kind of expect for that to be how this Titans offense looks going forward? Or do you think they try to open things up a bit and get Hopkins and Ridley and Burks involved a little bit more?
This is going to sound crazy, but so we asked the question yesterday, like, what is your biggest Titans concern coming out of week 1? And I think the obvious answer would be Will Levis. But for me, and it may sound crazy, it was Brian Callahan's inability to adjust. The Bears adjusted at halftime. They said, Eric Washington said, you are not going to be able to run the football on us in the second half. And Brian Callahan didn't have a counterpunch. And so that was concerning. Titans ran for 115 yards in the first half. Incredible. Ran for 25 in the second half. So in the second half, you're looking at 3 and outs, a block punt, a fumble, a pick 6. Like those are your possessions. So, my biggest concern is, and I think that's probably the most fixable thing, right? Like for a smart play caller is to be able to like have multiple game plans going in. I don't know that he didn't, but it sure didn't look like it.
Yeah, well, it's his first game as a coach. You would think, get better over the course of time. I'm curious to know. I know that you said that after the game you had someone call in and say trade Will Levis. Any chance anyone vouched for them to trade Will Levis for Malik Willis?
It's funny. Like Malik does have his fans in this market, and what's funny is like this week they got the Jets. Next week they get the Green Bay Packers. So Malik Willis will come into Nissan Stadium and probably start a game for a different team. And so Titans fans have battered Titan syndrome, BTS we call it, and they're fully expecting Malik Willis to come in there and beat them. So the early line is Tennessee is favored in that game by 2.5, but we'll see.
Well, I wanted to ask you about Willis because the Colts are playing him on Sunday. Like they have the Packers on the road. LaFleur said that Jordan Love might play. There's no way. He has a sprained MCL. There's no way he's playing.
Zero chance. What in the hell is he doing? Good Lord.
Yeah.
Nobody's buying that.
And so I went into Pro Football Reference last night. I was looking at Malik Willis. Not very impressive in the 3 starts that he had. I'm assuming you're going to kind of echo what I saw numbers-wise. But what are kind of the things to look for when you're playing against a guy like Malik Willis?
One read guy. If it's not there, he'll run. He has gotten. I will say this: he has gotten better. I think that was certainly noticeable when we went to training camp and practices and all those things. But when I talk to football guys, like in that world, while training camp was going on, despite Malik playing improving his game, the consensus thought around everyone I talked to in league circles was that Mason Rudolph was the backup quarterback, and that Malik they were gonna try to put him on the practice squad, but they found a trading partner, so they were happy to get that done. I don't know what he is moving forward, because you think you know him, and then he did get better. Like, he got better this offseason. He's working hard. And so, he gets LaFleur, and LaFleur's a great play caller and works well with whatever quarterback he has. And we'll see. I wouldn't anticipate Indianapolis having any trouble, though. I wouldn't. I think, what is the line? 3.5, something like that.
Yes.
I'm going Colts minus 3.5.
Okay. Good.
And
to
without hesitation.
Oh, without hesitation. That makes me feel even better. So, last question for you, Brent. Once again, joined by Brent Dougherty of 104.5 The Zone in Nashville. You're a good sport, so I feel like I can ask you this question. So, the Titans were one of 2 teams on Sunday to lose while not allowing an offensive touchdown. The other team, the Atlanta Falcons, who lost 18-10 and didn't give up a touchdown. Which fan base do you think was more frustrated watching their team lose in that fashion?
Titans for sure, because of the way that it happened with a ridiculous play that a quarterback should never. I mean, a backwards pitch toward the sideline. I mean, take the sack. Chicago hasn't done anything on offense. Punt the ball. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
For Atlanta, I think that kind of surprised me that Kirk Cousins didn't play better than that. But I think Atlanta's got a pretty decent team, and Pittsburgh always finds a way. Even when you think that they don't have anything, they always find a way to win ugly and get to 500 or whatever.
Did you see any of the Kirk Cousins clips from Sunday?
I haven't.
Oh man, it's brutal. Like, you talk about Rodgers being a statue on Monday night. Like, Kirk Cousins goes into his drop, and you know how usually on the last step, when the right foot hits the ground, like, there's a decent amount of force kind of going into the leg. That way they can load up and throw on time. Like, with Kirk Cousins, none of that. Like, he looked like he was like tiptoeing out there, like really kind of scared.
He looked like an old man coming off an Achilles. Is that what he looked like?
That's exactly what he looked like. Yeah.
I mean, hey, congrats to him, man. He keeps getting these contracts. But,
somehow.
Michael Penix Jr. is just sitting there, so we'll see.
You think I'd go to him. I really would. Like, Cousins, it didn't look great, and the offensive performance wasn't really there either. But Brent, thanks for your time, man. You were great as always.
Love it, Jonathan. Thank you, bro.
You got it. See ya. That is Brent Dougherty of 104.5 The Zone in Nashville. Great guy. Knows his stuff on the Titans. Great stuff there on Will Levis and Malik Willis, the quarterback that the Colts are going to be taking on Sunday. When we come back here in 4 minutes, the worst part of Chris Ballard reared its ugly head again yesterday. I've got that for you when we come back here in 4 minutes.
Unadulterated sports talk with unfiltered takes. It's the real Jonathan Smith Show on Indy Sports Ticket, 1430 AM and 99.5 HD2.
The real Jonathan Smith Show here on Indy Sports Ticket. Just had Brent Dougherty on of 104.5 The Zone. Jeez, Jonathan in Nashville. Great guy. Knows his stuff when it comes to Malik Willis and Will Levis. Great conversation with him. The podcast of that conversation will be up sometime pretty shortly after the show. But the biggest news in the Indianapolis Colts sports scene is Chris Ballard and JuJu Brents being placed on the IR yesterday after an apparent knee injury. And this is where Chris Ballard is the worst. Being an NFL general manager is hard. Okay, there are a lot of things outside of a general manager's control. A lot of your success is directly tied to whoever your quarterback is. And the only way to get a good quarterback is to be bad, which doesn't exactly make people happy. Okay, hiring a good coach isn't necessarily an easy thing to do. And drafting players is hard. Okay, a third of the NFL is undrafted. It is hard to be a general manager. And in any sport, whether it's the NFL, NBA, NHL, MLB, whatever, there are just a lot of things outside of a general manager's control. But certain things happen in the NFL every single year, and you have to be prepared for them. Okay, depth is incredibly important for roster building because injuries happen to every team in the NFL. That's why it's hard to three-peat. It's part of why half of the NFL playoff field changes every year because important players get hurt, and because of that, certain teams don't make the playoffs. Okay, and Chris Ballard wasn't prepared for important players to get hurt in the Colts secondary this year. Injuries happen to every team in the NFL every single year, and you have to be ready for them. A large part of roster building is creating depth, and Chris Ballard has completely ignored the secondary for years. Let's look at all of his drafts because, as we all know, he doesn't use free agency. He only uses the draft. In 2017, Chris Ballard drafted a safety and a corner in the first 2 rounds. 2018, he didn't take a single defensive back. 2019, he took a corner in the second round and 2 safeties, 1 in the 4th and 1 in the 5th. 2020, he took a safety in the 3rd round and a corner in the 6th. 2021, he took a defensive back in the 5th round. 2022, he took a defensive back in the 3rd round. 2023, he took a defensive back in the 2nd, 5th, and 7th rounds. And then this year, he took defensive backs in the 5th and 6th rounds. There's a lot of 5s in there. There's a lot of 4s. There's a couple of 3s. Not very many 1s and 2s. Okay? He has completely ignored drafting this position, even though the Colts have needed help in the secondary for a few years now. And this year, he had an opportunity to bolster the secondary. He had an opportunity in this year's NFL draft to take a good high-end corner with the 15th overall pick. He could have taken whoever he wanted. In case you forgot, the first 14 selections of the NFL draft this year were all offensive players. Chris Ballard could have taken whichever defensive player he wanted with the 15th pick. And instead of addressing the secondary by taking a guy like Quinion Mitchell, the best cornerback in the draft, who I'm on record saying that he should have taken, instead of taking that guy, he opted to draft another defensive lineman in Leatu Latu. Why in the world would he take another defensive lineman? The Indianapolis Colts have plenty of them. They have so many good defensive linemen. Do you know what they didn't need at the time of the NFL draft? Another defensive lineman. Do you know what they did need? I don't know. Literally anyone that can play in the secondary. They needed a good secondary player, whether it was a safety or a corner. And now we're going to sit around all football season, and we're going to turn on and watch the Eagles play. And we're going to have to sit there and watch Quinion Mitchell be awesome. Quinion Mitchell is starting for the Philadelphia Eagles right now, by the way. and he played well on Friday night against a good Packers receiving core. In 8 drafts, Chris Ballard has used 4 premium picks, and I define premium picks as first or second round picks. He's used 4 premium picks on defensive backs. That is it. No wonder the Colts secondary lacks depth. 2 of those premium picks came in 2017. Neither one of those guys are on the Colts roster anymore. He doesn't use free agency, and he doesn't prioritize the secondary in the draft. Look, there's only 7 rounds in the draft. Okay. You have 1 or 2, maybe 3 premium picks a year. Okay. First or second round selections. You can't prioritize every position in the draft. Okay. So that's fine. It's hard to do that. But when you don't prioritize the position in the draft, you have to use free agency to bolster the depth, to bolster the talent in that room. And Chris Ballard hasn't done that. He hasn't used free agency. And in the process of that, he has completely ignored an entire section of this Colts roster. And that is simply malpractice. And if you want to be even more honest about it, he's ignored linebackers as well. Look at the starting linebackers for the Colts. One was a 6th round selection, EJ Speed. The other was a 7th round selection in Zaire Franklin. He got lucky. He only uses premium draft spots to take offensive and defensive linemen. And that clearly doesn't work. It is malpractice what Chris Ballard has done as the Colts general manager. Okay? Seriously, it's bad. Okay? And instead of stepping back and evaluating his drafts and the lack of success that the Colts have had during this Chris Ballard regime, instead of stepping back and doing that, Chris Ballard's too busy signing horseshoe guys, going 9-8, and then re-signing those players that went 9-8. And now Chris Ballard finds himself in a bit of a pickle because JuJu Brents is on IR with a knee injury, could potentially be out for the rest of the year. Okay. And there's a way for him to fix this. That's, I would call it a good thing, but we all know that he's not going to fix this because in order for him to fix this JuJu Brents debacle, he's going to have to use free agency, and we know he won't do it. He has to do more than just sign Chris Lamons, an NFL journeyman from the practice squad. He has to do more than that. There are good veteran cornerbacks available to come in and play for the Colts. Xavier Howard is on the market. Patrick Peterson is on the market. Marcus Peters is on the market. Jerry Jacobs is on the market. There are older, proven veteran cornerbacks available for the Colts to go get. And all 4 of those guys that I just listed would step in and be the best corner in the Colts room immediately. And Chris Ballard will not go and sign any of them. And it's the worst thing about him. He is too stuck in his ways. And he told us this. He told us that he wasn't going to change. And that is his biggest issue. Here's Chris Ballard before the season started talking about his unwillingness to change the way that he does things.
I've never I guess maybe because my DNA is not, I've always had a strong belief in myself and those around me, strong belief in what we do. And if you just kind of look through the first few years and, we made the playoffs 2 of the first 4, had to overcome a, quarterback retiring on us, still found a way. I thought our 20 team was excellent. We just lost a tough game to Buffalo. That ended up being a really good team. And I thought in 21 was another really good football team. And it all kind of fell apart. The last 3 years not making the playoffs, it's a disappointment. I'm not going to sit here and say it wasn't. But I still have a very strong belief in what we're doing, how we're doing it, and how we're going to get there. And that will not – either you believe for something or you believe nothing. Like, it's easy to vacillate and go with what the world wants you to do. You either believe in something or you don't. This is what we believe. If it gets me fired, so be it.
Chris Ballard laying it on the line there. If it gets him fired, so be it. And it is probably going to get him fired. That's probably what's going to wind up happening. Look, I understand wanting to believe in something. Every general manager in every sports has a different philosophy on how teams should be built. Okay, every NFL team prioritizes different players and different positions and all those things. Here's the thing, though. If everyone's telling you to do something and you don't listen, at some point, you're just obstinate. And that is not okay. Obstinate people cannot lead. The best leaders listen to the people around them. The best leaders have people in their ear, in their inner circle, that can challenge what they believe. Okay, let's look at the Charlotte Hornets and let's look at Michael Jordan. Michael Jordan was a terrible owner. Do you know why? Because he's Michael Jordan and no one ever told him no and no one ever disagreed with him. That's why the Hornets were terrible for the entire time that he was the owner. And now they actually have a little bit of hope as a franchise because Michael Jordan doesn't own the team anymore. Okay, you have to have people in your inner circle that tell you when you're wrong. And just looking at the Colts and looking at this 8-year, regime of Chris Ballard, there are one of two issues in that building. One, Chris Ballard doesn't have anyone in that building disagreeing with him. That is an issue. Or he has people pushing back against how he's building the team, telling him where he could do things better, telling him where he's wrong, and he's not listening. Either way, it's an issue. Obstinate people are terrible leaders because you have to be able to pivot if you're going the wrong way. The Colts have been headed in the wrong direction for 8 years now. And Chris Ballard refuses to pivot. He refuses to change his ways. And that is his biggest issue. Or he just doesn't have anyone telling him is wrong. And you have to have people, if you're in a leadership position, that tell you when you're doing something incorrectly. It is the only way to grow that isn't detrimental to whatever you're managing. Okay? It's like my boss tells me when I have bad ideas. Okay? We meet all the time. Okay? If I have an idea, I run it by him. If it sucks or if I can't do it for whatever reason, he tells me. And it's frustrating, but it's a blessing. It's in my best interest. And I don't like it when he tells me no and when I don't need to do something or when I can't say this joke on the air or whatever it is. But since I know it's in my best interest, I listen and I adapt from there. The only other way to find out if an idea is bad is to try it and see the result. And that is a terrible way to build a football team. Hey, I think this is going to work. Let me do it for 8 years, not get any better and continue to do it. Okay, if you don't believe me, look at how Chris Ballard has run the Colts for the last 8 years. No depth in the secondary whatsoever. And it's going to cost the Colts some games this year. It's going to. And the Colts secondary is going to be horrendous once again. And look, if the Colts secondary is bad, it is not Gus Bradley's fault. If they give up 1 million passing yards a game, it is not Gus Bradley's fault. This falls squarely on the shoulders of Chris Ballard because he wasn't prepared for when injuries happen. And that is part of the gig of being a general manager. It's tough to have a good defense when your general manager doesn't prioritize it. This Colts team, Chris Ballard, just continuing to get in the way. There is some good news, or I'm going to spin this positively. Okay, there is a positive spin on this. I'm going to tell you what that is when we come back here in 4 minutes.
I'm getting older. Do I need to worry about falling?
Yes, you do. Every year, 1 in 4 people 65 and older will experience a fall, and many result in serious injury. The majority of falls happen.
More winners, more often. It's the Real Jonathan Smith Show on Indy's Sports Ticket, 1430 AM and 99.5 HD2.
What's going on? The Real Jonathan Smith Show here on Indy's Sports Ticket. Thanks for tuning in, no matter how you're tuning in, whether that's on the Indy Sports Ticket app, which you can download wherever you get your apps. Maybe you're watching the stream on Twitter. Follow me there, __ Jonathan Smith. Check out at Ticket 1430 to check out the station's Twitter. And, of course, head over to YouTube. Subscribe to Indy Sports Ticket. I think we're closing in on 100 subscribers, which in, like 5 months of doing the streaming, I feel like that's not too shabby. So head over to YouTube and subscribe. Check out the live stream while you're over there. Join the chat to join the conversation. Now, the good news for the Colts, and I don't even know if good news is the right word when it comes to this JuJu Brents injury, is that this happened at probably the best time. The Colts have 3 straight weeks of playing against quarterbacks that are questionable, to say the least, right? Like they get to play Malik Willis this week, then Caleb Williams next week, and then Russell Wilson or Justin Fields the week after that. So they have 3 games worth to figure out what they're going to do in terms of the JuJu Brents on IR, out for a while scenario. So if you want the glass half full approach, there you go. And speaking of Malik Willis, Matt LaFleur came out yesterday and said that Jordan Love could still potentially play. I doubt that that's going to happen, but here's what Packers head coach Matt LaFleur had to say about Jordan Love's chances of playing on Sunday.
And is Malik going to be the guy as you go forward here, and are you preparing him to be the starter?
Yeah, if Jordan's not cleared, then we'll start Malik and Sean will be the backup.
What's the possibility, say if Jordan's clear, what's the possibility of Jordan actually being ready for?
I couldn't give you a percentage, but if he gets cleared, we'll give him every opportunity like we always will. And, I know he's doing everything in his power. I know he's spending a lot of time trying to get back as soon as possible, but certainly we're not going to put him in a position where if he can't protect himself that he'd go out there.
That was Packers head coach Matt LaFleur taking questions on whether or not Jordan Love would play. It's apparently on the table. It's not. It's a facade. There's no way. No way he's playing. Jordan Love sprained his MCL. That is not exactly an easy injury to deal with. And it's one that could get worse if he played, especially against this Colts defensive line and pass rush. Look, say what you want about the run defense. Wasn't very good. But this Colts defensive line can get after the passer. And I think that the Packers, they're going to sit down. They're going to watch the Colts film against the Texans, and they're going to realize, ooh, yeah, if Jordan Love plays this game, he's probably going to get banged up a pretty decent amount. We also just made him, a $55 million a year guy at quarterback. We should probably not risk his long-term health this early in the year. So that's what I think is going to wind up happening. I don't think Jordan Love plays on Sunday. Vegas doesn't think so either. They still have the Colts favored at 3.5 points, despite what Matt LaFleur said yesterday. And that means that the Colts get to play against Malik Willis, who's not very good. I had Brent Dougherty of 104.5 The Zone from Nashville on earlier to talk about Malik Willis, who was traded for a 7th-round pick from the Titans earlier in the year. And, he made it pretty clear. The dude isn't very good. Okay, and the numbers back that up. Was on Pro Football Reference last night, started working through the Malik Willis games. He's appeared in 12 games during his career, only started 3 of them. His teams are 1-2 in the games that he started. In those 3 starts, he threw 0 touchdown passes. He threw 3 interceptions, and he completed only 51% of his pass attempts in those 3 starts. The guy is simply not very good. But he's athletic. He can run. We know that this Colts front 7 had some struggles during week 1. He ran for over 40 yards in 2 of his 3 starts, which isn't even that good. But, that's the biggest threat that he poses to this Colts defense, averaging just under 5 yards a carry. Look, it's going to be interesting to see how the Packers attack this Colts defense, because they definitely aren't going to trust Malik Willis to throw the football. So I think we're going to see a ton of Josh Jacobs. Okay, we're going to see the back of Malik Willis's jersey a lot as he turns around to hand it off. And hopefully the Colts can fix the run defense. Gus Bradley said that part of why they struggled to defend the running against the Texans was because they were overly concerned about Stephon Diggs, Tank Dell, and Nico Collins. Okay, that shouldn't be an issue this week. I know that the Packers have good receivers, but it's Malik Willis at quarterback. It'd be completely different if Jordan Love was the guy. So I expect for this Colts front 7 to be much better, and I expect for Josh Jacobs and these Packer running backs to get the majority of the carries going in the game on Sunday. Colts front 7 has got to bounce back, and they have to be good, or else the Colts are going to start 0-2. But football doesn't start up again until tomorrow night. So you're probably asking yourself, what am I going to do tonight? And what you should do tonight is you should watch the Indiana Fever, because the Caitlin Clark effect is still very much alive and well. I went out to dinner last night with my wife and, went to a nice little spot. It was great. It was lovely. We're sitting there eating great food, great appetizers, great bourbon. It was wonderful. Had a wonderful time. And eventually, there comes a moment where, my wife and I were sitting there and she has to use the restroom. So she stands up, she walks away, whatever. And so I'm sitting there and I begin eavesdropping on the conversations around me, not on purpose, but because for whatever reason, when people go out to eat, they act like the booth that they sit in is soundproof, and they're not. So maybe keep your voices down. And so I'm sitting here and I'm listening to all these other conversations. And I overhear this one table. And, they've got this like Southern drawl in their voice. And the waitress that was serving them asked them where they were from. They're like, oh, we are from South Carolina. And the waitress was like, oh, do you live here now? And they're like, no, we're just visiting. And it's a Tuesday night. It's like, and so the waitress is like, what are you doing in Indianapolis on a Tuesday night? And their response was, we drove from South Carolina to watch Caitlin Clark and the Indiana Fever play tomorrow night. The Caitlin Clark effect is still alive and well. She is still she still has a portion of the United States captivated, and they're going to tune in to watch her tonight. They're driving in from out of state to watch her play basketball. The game tonight at Gamebridge is sold out. Like we all know that it is. Okay? And look, tonight is a great game to watch. It's a great game to go to. I have to tip my cap to the WNBA because the Fever are playing the Aces tonight. Okay, and it's just fun to watch two of the best players in any league play against each other. And that is what we have going on tonight with Caitlin Clark and A'ja Wilson. Okay, and this applies to every sport. Like, it's fun when the Bills play the Chiefs and we get to watch Patrick Mahomes and Josh Allen duel it out. Growing up for me, when Tom Brady and Peyton Manning used to face off back in the day, I always tuned in. Always. Okay, when Bird and Magic played, in the 80s, everyone tuned in, whether it was college or the NBA. When LeBron and Steph play against each other, everyone tunes in because it's just fun to watch two of the best players in any sport play against each other. And that is what we are getting tonight. And I appreciate the WNBA for scheduling this on a Wednesday night, because if it was on a Thursday night, there's not a chance I'd be watching the Thursday night football game. If this game was on a Sunday, wouldn't be watching. I'd be watching the football. If it was on a Saturday, sorry, not watching. I'm watching the football. But it's on a Wednesday night, and the WNBA did something smart here. Let's put the future face of the league, Caitlin Clark, even though she kind of is the face of the league already, against the best player. And let's let everyone watch because it's a Wednesday night and no one has anything else going on. We get to watch A'ja Wilson, who should be the unanimous MVP of the WNBA this year. She's been awesome from start to finish. And Caitlin Clark should be the unanimous rookie of the year. These are the matchups that people want to see in every sport. So I will be tuned in tonight, and you should be tuned in as well. The game is going to be so much fun to watch. We haven't seen the Indiana Fever play against the Las Vegas Aces in quite some time. They played each other early in the year in Vegas. Remember when the WNBA screwed the Fever over to start the year, and they're like, hey, we're going to have you play against nothing but the best teams in the WNBA repeatedly on the road. And then the Fever had to be like, oh, okay. And then they went out there and they got stomped by the Las Vegas Aces. But Caitlin Clark and the Indiana Fever have come a long way since then. They are 3.5-point underdogs tonight, which I think speaks to the improvements that they've made. This is an important game for the WNBA standings. As the Indiana Fever are looking to move up, get out of the 6th seed. That way they can avoid playing against either the Connecticut Sun or the Minnesota Lynx, two teams that are just kind of tough matchup-wise, right? But if they are only, let me think here, 3.5 games back of the Aces. They play twice in the coming days. If they can win both, they'll move up, maybe have a chance to jump into that 5th seed and play against the Seattle Storm. So we'll see. Big game tonight for the Fever. Just big game from a simple entertainment standpoint. Okay, so much fun watching the best athletes in any league go at it, and that is exactly what we are going to get tonight with A'ja Wilson and the Las Vegas Aces taking on Caitlin Clark and the Indiana Fever. That game, what time does that game start? Let me actually look here real quick. That game starts at 7 o'clock tonight, NBA TV, which means it'll be blacked out on NBA TV, and you'll probably have to watch on Bally or, wherever they put the local games at. So can't wait to watch. Should be an absolute blast. The Dan Dougherty Show coming up from noon to 3. Greg McElroy, I know, is set to join us at 1 o'clock to talk a little college football. Dan said yesterday he was going to grab one of the Titans guys from Outkick to talk a little Will Levis. We'll see who he ends up pulling, but the Dan Dougherty Show today is going to be pretty interesting because the debate happened last night, and I'm very excited to hear him talk about pretty much anything at this point, because you never know where the conversation is going to go. He's going to have thoughts on Chris Ballard. I'm assuming that they're going to echo mine, something about him being terrible and how he's the worst. And, it's tough to be successful when you either don't listen to the people around you or you surround yourself with people that never tell you no. Like, you have to have people that push back against you and challenge you in order to grow. That's just the reality of everything. That, or you have to fail, and you have to learn from those mistakes. And Chris Ballard is doing neither one of those things. Quick injury update for you on the Colts. Matt Gay and Josh Downs are practicing today. Josh Downs will be limited. DeForest Buckner, however, is not practicing today. He's got that lower back injury. Hopefully, he'll be good to go for Sunday. Colts are going to need him to apply that pressure on Malik Willis. Thanks for tuning in to the Real Jonathan Smith Show. Head over to Indy Sports Ticket, subscribe to the channel, turn on the post notifications, all those things. That way you can join the live streams, join the chat, and be a part of the conversation. Thank you again for tuning in. I really appreciate it. I'll be back on the air tomorrow from 10 to noon. The Dan Dockett Show comes your way here in about 5 minutes.